Matt Connelly with the double biceps. It is in the contract a legal requirement. Every single time we appear on camera, just making sure the lawyers are happy the box that they like to tick has been ticked. They have seen two biceps. There was one there, and there was the other one there. I don't know which one's their favorite, but I'm liking this one more at the moment because I don't know what this thing is here, but it's doing something that's getting my aesthetic appeal. Anyway, that's enough about the biceps. We're here with one of my good friends, guys who's been in the arm wrestling scene for around 7 years and a veteran of the SA Titans Arm Wrestling Club. It is none other than Stephen Carroll. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. We're going to change camera view so that we get nice and close. And it's been a long journey for you, 7 years in the sport of arm wrestling. The very first thing I'd love to know, and I don't think I've ever actually asked you this, what is it that got you into arm wrestling?
So I came from a long background of martial arts and honestly started getting pretty bored of them. And it wasn't so much because like the competition or whatever was there. I just kind of lost interest. I had a friend of mine come down from the defense once and he's like, if you're looking for a new sport, you should check this out, and showed me a video of Devon. So I started watching Devon. I got really interested. I think it was maybe 6-7 months after that, I got contact from the club. I think the thing that's made me stick with it so long is in all martial arts and other sports that I've done in the past, it's always been controversial if you win, right? Everybody can say the whole, there's a lucky punch, there was a lucky hit or whatever it may be. Arm wrestling to me is like definitively, if you win, you've kind of won. There's not too much controversy because if you run that match back 3, 4, 5 times, it's usually going to be the same result. So,
right, yeah, and you'll get a victory that should be quite clearly obvious every time. It's like, well, did you get pinned or did they pin you? That's usually the outcome. I hate when matches end on fouls. I think it's a travesty.
The flash pins that people do where you don't actually know if they pinned them or not, but they walk away as if they've gotten the pin. That's also.
Yeah. Oh, as a referee, I absolutely love that. When guys are lightning fast and they have a hit and you didn't expect them to, maybe you didn't expect them to press. And so, I say go and then bang, and it's like and it's like, I didn't even get a chance to get down to see whether that hit or not. And then we're like, oh yeah, it was definitely a pin. It's like, I have no idea. And, if you haven't got a down ref, it's very, very difficult to make that call and say it's a definitive win or not, especially like say you've got the pad like there and their hand like goes, it's like, did it go beneath or not? Like, did that? It's like, there's been so many times where, especially like with guys like Lass or there's other people in the club that when they pin, they're pinning so close to the pad, like they're never like that burying somebody. It's like they're just coming to that borderline and then up again and walking away. And it's like, I don't know if it was a pin. And they're like, it was obviously a pin. And the other person's like, it wasn't a pin. Nothing. My hand didn't touch anything. So yeah, it can be very, very difficult.
Well, I guess that comes down to where the split going to happen, right? We either go to the point we're getting like high resolution, like sports cameras, or we go to the side which I personally refer, which is a pin needs to be completely obvious. Like there shouldn't be we need a replay on that. It should be, if you didn't make that pin obvious that people notice, then too bad.
Yeah, it is difficult, and yeah, if you've got the cameras there, sure, that's the ideal situation to be able to go back and slow-mo it down. But even then, it's like you got to have the camera at the right angle. You'd almost have to have a separate camera that's just looking at the pin pads, because like with my one that I set up, I'm trying to get both guys in frame. I'm trying to get the referee, and make it as entertaining and as possible content-wise. But it's at a higher angle than where the table sits. And so it might look like there was a pin, but really it's actually, it's not level. So you can't use that reliably. But it's one of those things with this sport that some people are just so bloody quick. And I've so many times where I've said go and two arms have just gone like this. I'm like, I don't know what happened.
It's funny in arm wrestling in terms of like the ready go that the rules kind of are you should hit on the ready before the go, because in most other sports you don't really get away with that. Arm wrestling kind of the only one. And funny enough, I got taken out, I think maybe like a year ago to go and try gridiron because like just a training camp or whatever it was, just to give it a go. And I remember we were doing a thing where it was like a sprint or whatever, and you had to do the ready go thing. And I kept getting in trouble because I was like going way before everybody else. Like 4 or 5 times in a row, they're like, "No, that was too quick." And it's just like I'm just so used to like as soon as they say ready, I'm off.
Yeah, I don't know why that rule was in place, and that's why we got rid of it with AWE. It was like that makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. If you're gonna say ready, it's like you're asking the participants, "Are you ready?" And then it's go, like go on go. That's what it should be. And if they're going on ready, it's like what do you? And so then they changed that to ready go, and it's like that doesn't make any sense either. Now you've just combined the words. So we just got rid of the ready, and it's like I just say go.
There's a lot of people out there like Devin and stuff who completely disagree because they want that ready there so they can go first.
Yeah, it's one of the things I don't like about the sport is all of the manipulation of the rules, and somebody can literally win over an opponent that's better than they are just by manipulating that setup more than their opponent did, and it's a real frustration. It's like he's lifted his elbow and he's pushed his hand way up in the strap, and then when they've pulled it down, now he's got like another half an inch of height over his opponent. It's like, well, he's basically just won the match by doing that.
It's interesting though, because what's your opinion going forward if we were to take back a lot of the things that people can manipulate, taking away from, I guess, the technical aspects of the sport?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. It's there's no easy answer, and I think it's almost the same as like gun culture in America. When people say that they're against it or whatever, but the people there have grown up with that and they're so used to that, and it's ingrained in their society that you say, oh, we're gonna take this away, and they're like, no, that's not gonna happen. And it feels like the same way with arm wrestling. People are so used to that, being able to manipulate every little thing that they possibly can, that if you said, okay, we're removing that, then there would be people would just be like, no, it's not arm wrestling anymore, and I'm not doing that. And this organization, we're not pulling with them because they don't let us do this. Ideally, I think it would be fantastic if there was some sort of thing you both put your hands into that lines you up like fairly, and you've closed your grip. You can't move from there, like it prevents you from moving, and then somehow or another it like disappears as you say go. I mean, I'm imagining magic stuff here, but like it's there's no easy answer for it, unfortunately.
See, interesting. I've had the thought about this, and doing it like that, where the setup is basically identical each time, I think makes it hard because then you're just always going to have complete one-sidedness, right? Like whoever wins round one is most likely going to take two or three because they can't adjust the setup to, I guess, like change technique.
Yeah, I'm just like hello to everyone in the chat briefly because I do see a lot of familiar faces in here, which is great to see. We've got Phil Woody all the way from the UK, Phil Hollywoody, one of the legends over in the UK there. We've got McGonagall Sings, which is, of course, the Franche McGee, one of the SA Titans Arm Wrestling Club members. She says that Matt's technique is yell go really loud, so I startle, jump, and get a foul. I yell it because I want you to know that the match has started. It's not like go. It's like, have we started or not? Like, it's like, no, it's very bloody obvious that is the starting point. Kyle Davison, another SA Titans arm wrestling member, and I think about a year in at this point, doing really good stuff with his technique and getting stronger. And you should never ask me if I'm ready. I never am. Also, hi, Stephen. He's a big fan.
Oh. Hello.
The Drew, the legendary Drew. It's past midnight there. And what are we doing here? Yeah, we jumped on with one of the SA Titans Arm Wrestling Club members, but we have some exciting news for Stephen. He has something which we'll talk about in a minute or two. We'll just finish up this discussion about technique, but there is a very particular reason we have Stephen on today. And Brandon Chan, one of the legends of the SA Titans Arm Wrestling Club. Great to see so many people from the club jumping in the chat here. And he says, hello, Matt, and my good buddy, Steven. Stephen with a PH. And Brandon, hope you're well. Hope everything is going well for you. I know you've been battling some dramas lately. So, we hope that everything starts turning around and going in your favor very, very shortly. But it's great to have the people jumping in the chat here. In terms of technique and manipulation, it is a frustration. It is, and it's almost like when you're explaining it to somebody when they come into the club and you're teaching technique and you're showing them how to do this and how to do that, and they start to grasp the fundamentals of movements of top rolls and press and hook and all the rest of it. It's almost difficult to say you will lose a match because of the way the other person sets up, and it is almost 90% that you need to know how to get your best possible setup before the referee says go. Like that side of it, it's like, well, hang on, what? Like that, because I'm like, people will cheat you out of every single thing that they can. It's like, oh, they're allowed to do that? I'm like, they will do every single thing to give themselves an advantage over you. And that part, saying that, it feels dirty. It's like, but it happens. That's the way the sport goes. It's like people literally will get every advantage possible before that match starts so that they can get the win. And if they get the win through that, there's no guilty feeling. It's like, well, hey, I bet I set up better than you did. It's an advanced setup. So yeah, it is frustration for me.
It is interesting because I believe like a while ago, I guess before Devon and stuff hit the scene, it was never considered cheating, right? Like people they were trying to get their grip, but they wouldn't exaggerate that grip to the point where it becomes like almost unethical or in a cheating manner. But then I believe it was Devon who kind of started popularizing that idea where it's just like, if you can cheat, get away with it, cheat, get away with it. So I'm curious if people kind of used to do that same sort of thing where they're manipulating the grip and just trying to get the best possible setup. It just wasn't really, I guess, vilified as much as it is now.
Yeah, it is. It's an extreme frustration, but it is part of the game at this point. And I know you're quite adept at knowing how to set up for getting the best possible technique for each person. You're coaching a couple of guys at the club and explaining, depth of the hand and height position and kicking wrists and doing this. And hey, if you want to go to the hook, you're going there. And something you were explaining to me last night, which was quite interesting, is a change that you've had in your setup for your hook. So you've really improved your ability to chop through your hook. And you found that, well, I'll let you explain it if you want, because it's your thing.
Yeah, so I guess I've come to realize that I've been training a lot of that like internal like rotation of the wrist, right? And what I found is when I was setting up with Hamza the other week, I was setting up very deep as if you would against a top roller in order to get that hook. But once I was in there, that chop on the wrist was too far down towards like his bicep connection. So I was basically trying to use that rotation to stop his entire frame and bicep. And obviously that didn't go well for me. So my wrist is still kind of suffering from it. But what I realized is setting up almost like I'm setting up to top roll, even though, yes, it's a bit harder to actually get that hook in and actually activate that. Once I'm in the hook, my wrist is higher, so that chop is actually hitting their wrist joint instead of on their bone. So it ends up letting me access that chop a lot better and shut down, I guess, what they're trying to do a lot more effectively.
Yeah, so when you're on that start, instead of sort of pressing against this part of their arm, you're now only you've taken this whole area out of the equation, and you're just using your chop, which is dominating the wrist. And it's like, it doesn't matter if somebody has an incredibly strong arm or strong bicep. As soon as this gets turned over, this just gets removed from the ability to defend with.
Exactly right. You're basically eliminating their ability to go sideways or really take control of the match. And if that wrist gets turned over too far, at that point, it's like your wrist will snap or you give up the match. The reason I've kind of swapped into a lot of this stuff is because I was very much a frame puller for a long time there. Because for a long time, I was kind of the heaviest guy at the club. I had a lot of pretty good lifts and stuff. But now we're getting some like mutants come along, like, Stretch from our club, who's 6'8" and 150 kilos. And it started teaching me, cool, well, I'm not fighting against that frame. It's just kind of not going to be an avenue for me. So I've swapped back into mainly focusing on what probably is the smarter way to arm wrestle, attacking like the weakest parts and not trying to make the match fair anymore. So
Yeah, that's sort of the first thing that I will explain to somebody when they jump on the table is you're trying to make it every moment and every movement better for you and worse for them, and you're trying to use your leverage at attacking their weakest point. And when if I'm explaining the top roll, I'm like, well, the reason that you're flexing your wrist is that you're now putting their wrist in a palm up position, which puts pressure. So if they're defending like that. Now their bicep is the thing that's defending as opposed to the forearm bones. The bicep's going to get tired very quickly because it's a muscle, whereas the bone is not going to get tired ever because it's a bone. And then when you're rolling, so from this fulcrum here, this point here, you're rolling into their weakest point, which is their little finger and their ring finger. And so if you're putting all of your body weight and momentum into that little finger and ring finger of the opponent, and everything's going back for you, and they're getting extended away from their body, it's like good luck holding that. It's unless you've got the world's strongest little finger and ring finger, and even then, it's like you'd probably still struggle.
Well, that was kind of one of the first avenues of things I did start training in arm wrestling, was really focusing on that pinky finger. Because I have found that is a very weak point for most people. And if you're going against like a low hand top roller, or even when you're in a hook and that rotation, that pinky finger does take a lot of stress. So this is why my hand, as you can see, I've got a lot of meat around where that pinky is, because I do train that pretty flat out. There's an interesting series on Netflix called Sanctuary. And it's a sumo wrestling one. And it was so cool to see. He realized his pinky was his weakness. And there was a whole episode of him just doing chin-ups and all these different lifts just on his pinkies. So let's just say I took a bit of from that,
right? Oh, no. Well, anyway, he was a sumo wrestler doing chin-ups, which is funny to start with. But then he was doing it with his pinky finger. That what? Okay, is this a fantasy show or is it a reality show?
It's meant to be realistic on sumo, but it's still a series of characters and whatever. So I don't think he's actually doing it, but I don't know, man. People like Lass of the club, I wouldn't put it past him to get to that point, because they train ridiculously with those finger containment lifts. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. We've got Andrew Wood in the chat. He says you could blow off your TFCC doing that. I'm not sure what that is, Andrew. You're going to have to let us know. I'm sure he's talking about the pinky. There's probably some, the technical medical term of it's like they call it, oh, this process here, and you're like, you mean my hand bone? Yeah, so maybe he's referring to something like that. Yeah, exactly. And we've got Isa Tosin Hassan, who is saying hello to you, sir. Great to see you in here. No one does pull-ups on pinkies, let alone sumo wrestlers. It was fake. Yeah, I think it is from the sounds of it is a scripted fake show. 100%. Yes.
Yeah. The guy's 130 kilos something. If he was doing that, I'd be very impressed.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's world record level strong. Is chin-up something that you've incorporated into your game at all?
Recently, actually, yes. So I've always had a very hard time getting my lats to activate in pretty much every lift I do. I do lat pull downs, rows, all of this stuff. And I feel like my forearm and bicep and everything else always takes over. I've recently started adding in weighted chin-ups, and I've noticed my lats are actually starting to get some growth and development. So I think recently I started off just doing them body weight, not too bad, added 20. I think right now the max I can get is about 50 kilos on with the weighted. But then there's the Stretch at the club who's doing 90 kilos, and the guy weighs 150 kilos. So once again, not beating that frame.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's going to rapidly continue his rise through the arm wrestling ranks, I believe. But it's great to have people like that choosing arm wrestling as their go-to sport, and that's one of the things that I've noticed in the last couple of years is that I'm about 5.5 years in at this point in time, and when we started, it was you, me, and Tim maybe at the club. That was about it, and then Richard as well. But now we're up to like almost 40 people that are coming along regularly every week, and you're getting more and more people that know about arm wrestling, that are getting interested in it, that have seen Devon's videos, or they might have seen some of the gym stuff that I've done with Derrim at gym, or any of the Ryan Bowen stuff, or Schoolboy, or the arm wrestling whisperer, or Jake Ward with the Aussie arm wrestler. There's these sort of personalities that are out there really pushing the sport of arm wrestling, and you do get people that have heard of it, that at least where they don't go, "What are you talking about? What is that? Is that a thing? I thought it was like a kitchen table mess around thing," So that side of it has really improved. But yeah, seeing somebody who has the ability to do strongman, to do powerlifting, to do what is it, gridiron? We call it gridiron here, but that's the NFL sport, American football. Like he would be ideal for any of those things. Basketball. But no, he decided, look, arm wrestling is the thing for me, which is it's so amazing to see that people are going, "No, I'm actually enjoying this," even though at this point in time, there's probably maybe 4 or 5 people in the world that are making a full-time income from arm wrestling, and I'd say 3 out of 5 of those are not making an income just from their arm wrestling alone. They would be making it from the outside sources of social media and sponsors and all the rest of it. But to see somebody going, "Well, no, I'm enjoying this to the point where I don't care if there's money or not. Like I love it so much that I'm going to choose this, and this is going to be my sport."
Well, I guess it's just so cool finding a sport that's kind of the ultimate combination of a strength-based sport and a combat sport. I think you go into pretty much any sport that's solely combat, it's all about just like technique and stuff. You're not really trying to build muscle. You're not really like, obviously you do to an extent, but that's not the big driving force. And then you've got strongman and stuff, which is awesome because you're just building muscle and trying to get as strong as possible, but there's no one-on-one competition. Like as much as they kind of tried making some like examples of that where they do like 2 people racing each other and that, there's not that like that feeling of I'm trying to win, I'm trying to have this one-on-one combat with someone. So I think that's why a lot of people now are starting to fall towards arm wrestling because they love gym. Like there's a lot of people out there that love gym, but they don't want to get really lean for a sport. They like to say big and strong. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew says 110 kilos is the heaviest single pinky lift. Wow, even that is absolutely insane. You think like you've got a 100 kilo bar, and just to pick that up with one hand, even it'd be incredibly difficult. But to do it with one finger, and it's 110 kilos. That's yeah. I wonder if there's a video of that. I'd love to see it. I wonder how they've measured it. Like, did he have to lift it, or did he have to pull something? I don't know. But yeah, we're going into the very niche of the niche in that. What are you doing at the gym? You're sitting there with like doing peaky crunches the
I
whole
mean, I
time.
do it with a thumb, right? So, I'll sit there with my thumb lifts in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do get a couple of people come up at some point and say, "What are you actually doing there?" Because you do a couple of unique lifts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's why the shirt's great because a lot of people, they will walk up and just look at the shirt and be like, "Oh, you're doing arm wrestling? That makes sense now." And it's like, cool. So I find a lot
Yeah.
of people want to give it a go as well. Lately at gym, I've been doing some like really obscure lifts, like dragging along the sled. I've just been attaching a rope and doing side pressure sled sort of stuff. And I had heaps of people strange looking at me. I'm like, "Oh, this is a bit awkward." But then I just had multiple people go, "Oh, can I give that a go?" I'm like, "Okay, let me lighten the weight for you first, because new." But it's cool because then I get to talk to them about arm wrestling and tell them to come along, and it's always a fun time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, as we were saying before, the announcement you've got, you're going over to Singapore, and there's something that's happening over there. Are you going to tell us about what's happening when you get there?
Well, yeah, Indonesia. I'm going to be going over there to have a match with the #1 Indonesian puller at the moment. So
Fantastic.
very, very excited for that. That's going to be, I believe, on the 14th. So I've got about 2 and a bit weeks left to prep. The first big international match. So this is going to be really good. It's been in the making now for maybe about a month or two. I've been talking and trying to get hold of people. Obviously, you'd understand it's kind of hard when you're not from there and you're trying to get information and stuff. But yeah, no, very excited. The guy's name is Bobby. I've watched a few of his videos now. He looks pretty strong. Yeah, no, I'm very excited to kind of test myself on this international level and kind of see where I'm at. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what I love about when people say, "Look, I'm gonna go international, and I'm coming to you, and I'll take on your best guy. Who's your best guy?" So well done for doing that. I think it's incredible.
Well, the funny story is when I was actually originally trying to plan it, they kind of didn't know where to gauge my strength on, and they were deciding like, who should we put you against? We don't really know. And I was kind of hoping to get the #1 guy. But I was talking back and forth to the guy who's helping me organize it. And I said to him, well, would it help you gauge my strength if I sent you some like videos or whatever of me doing some lifts or blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, do that. I just randomly had a video on my phone of doing like a bicep curl. And I was like, I'll just send that to him now just so he kind of knows roughly in the waters. And within 5 minutes, he's like, yep, so the #1 guy's accepted your match. So I mean, to be fair, I don't know how to take that because either it means, yes, he thinks I'm strong enough for him, or two, the guy's like, oh, that lift's not impressive enough, I'll take it. So
there might have been some other stuff that I sent behind the scenes that you didn't know about.
Oh, well, I appreciate that then.
But yeah, no, your game has definitely improved insanely. I mean, from when you started, you probably had one of the best rises through the ranks in terms of like strength and technique and knowledge to the point where you're at now. Because for quite a long period of time, was it the first year or 2 years you were getting sort of beaten by majority of people?
Yeah, so this kind of what got me addicted to the sport, to be honest, is because I sucked at it. I think it took me about a year to actually beat just a single person in training pools. It took me about 2 years before I could actually get a pin on someone in a comp. And then it was just from after that, it took me like just ages. I think it was year 5 or 6 before I actually placed the top 3 of the competition. So it's been a very, very long, slow process for me. But the biggest thing that actually changed it, and this is going to be a very controversial opinion for a lot of people, I personally believe for strength growth, it is better to step away from the table for long periods of time and just focus stuff in the gym. And I've had a lot of people disagree with me on this topic, and I know it's very hard to talk about because obviously everybody who arm wrestles wants to keep arm wrestling. Depending on who you get to train with, it's very hard to avoid like micro injuries and tears from training to like actually allow your muscles and stuff to continue to grow. So my biggest jump in terms of strength is when I took, I think it was about 6 months off of table time completely and just focused on all the fundamentals in gym. And I went from basically getting killed by like 90% of the club to beating some of the top dudes in training pools. And even when they would disagree with me originally saying it's not the right move, once I actually arm wrestled them and I started beating them, they were kind of like, oh, okay, well, whatever you're doing, it's probably the right thing to do. So it could vary from person to person, but that's just, for me, what I've kind of figured has helped me kind of raise that level. And it could just be that my strength was what was holding me back, not technique. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a comment here from Taryn Broad, one of the SA Titans, the #1 rank on right arm, and somebody that I know you've been chasing and have been training with for many years. He says it can work if programmed correctly. Toddzilla does table time once every 1 to 2 months. So there you go.
I also, on a video a while ago from Levan, I believe he said he only does table time once every 3 to 6 months, and even then he only works at like 50%.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember what video that was, but it was a video of him in the gym and he was just doing general lifts or something. Who knows how true that is? Like, I just remember seeing it and going, that's crazy, but that is kind of the same philosophy that I started realizing myself. So
Yeah, I don't know because I mean, I've seen videos of him and Orakli that they're doing their gym training. They explain their sort of daily routine, which was in the gym, and then they were on the table like nearly every day. I don't know, but yeah,
The sport is like getting the right information because someone can say one thing, but they're doing something completely different, right?
yeah.
So who knows? Some people might just say things in order to give like an information that they think is wrong, so other people might follow the wrong thing or whatever. Don't think obviously Levan was doing that, but I'll need to find the video because I've told a few people about it and I remember it clear as day, but it could also be just like I misheard or something. So I need to track that down so I can at least have some weight behind what I'm saying.
Oh, that's fair enough. But yeah, it is one of the interesting parts about fitness overall. Uh, it- no matter what you're doing with whatever sport, different things will work for different people. And it's just about finding what is the best thing that works for you. So, like for me in the gym, like, chasing hypertrophy and trying to build muscle, I did get a lot out of doing 1 to 4 reps, 1 to 8 reps. I didn't get a lot out of that. But for me, like as soon as I started raising the rep ranges to like 16, 25, that's where it took off for me. And that's just what works for me. It doesn't mean that it'll work for everyone. It's just, that's how it has played out and that's how I will train. But the same with arm wrestling, I mean, John Brasink famously talks about that table time for him is everything, and so he'd do as much table time as he possibly could. Whereas others might say, "Look, I only get on the table once every few months," and that's what works for them. So it is about finding that balance. But I think one of the important factors to consider is that when you're on the table, is what sort of training are you doing? Like, what level of training are you doing? Because most of the time at the club, it's not structured at all. It's just we put the tables up and people go for it. And the majority of the time is people trying to beat each other. And so it's just matches kind of thing, just people just going to war. But I know that there's a lot of places like in Georgia where they're very strict about they'll get on the table and they'll just practice that movement against each other, and that's what they do for that day. And then the next day maybe they're just doing this, but it's 70-80%. They're never in like a crazy war, and so everything's getting time to recover. They're getting the ability to work through technique in all areas. But it's for us, I mean, well, not for us, but for me, it's a lot less fun to do it that way.
100%. Honestly, I think I agree with that training motto so much. Not once have I been able to actually do it myself because by the time I'm on with someone strong, regardless of what we set as the rules, it ends up going to a war and we just want to muck around. But this is why I think people like Devon, John, all those guys who do believe in tabletop, I think it's hard because they're probably always the strongest people in training, right? Wherever they're going or whoever they're training with, they're the strongest. Therefore, for them, they're dictating how much strength they want to use in most training pools. And I think this is why they can progress so well in training because no one's usually ripping through them hard. They're getting to dictate. They're only getting ripped through once the muscle is fatigued enough where they're probably not going to injure themselves when it happens. And I think that kind of goes the same with most clubs. Once there's someone who's kind of number one, they will continue to get stronger because there's no one's really going to injure them in training. And I think this is why for people who aren't at that top level of strength, yes, doing like working with people either below you or working with people that are like respectful and going to just give you that right amount of pressure, or going straight to just focusing on gym time, I think is the best way to actually improve fast.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Well, Taron Broad's jumped in here again. He says Tom Zilla's programming is very meticulous, that he can do table time much less often. I ran into bad overtraining recently, trying to fit high volume and table time frequently. Yeah, it's one of those things, Taron, I think we were talking about this last night, is that you just got to try and find the method that is best for you. And it is a bit of experimentation. And maybe it's like, okay, well, let me take a couple of weeks off and just focus on lifts in the gym and see how I feel. And then maybe you come back on the table when you're actually weaker and you're like, well, this is not right for me. And then maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you come back and you feel fantastic, but then you gas out really fast. And it's like, so, it's finding what is the best possible balance of training method that works for you.
But I think arm wrestling as a sport, like we all kind of know, it brings out everybody's egos pretty hard, right? Like I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm sure a lot of other people are, where it's like I want to win, I want to have fun. It is so hard. I've gone so many times to training going, I'm not going to arm wrestle today, or I'm only going to arm wrestle at 50%. I don't think once I've actually managed to pull that off. I've literally thought about during a prep coming in with just like handcuffs on that I don't get the key back until afterwards, solely so I physically can't jump on the table. Uh, Such a difficult thing to step back when everybody else is having a good time. And even if you do manage not to do it, one person's got to come up and go, you want to jump on? And it's impossible to go, oh, no, actually, I'm just going to not.
It's almost like you gotta. It's almost that Alcoholics Anonymous kind of thing, and it's like it's like putting an alcoholic in a liquor store, surrounded by all the stuff that you want. But I've so many times, I drive people up to training, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm just going to take it easy today." I'm like, "Okay," and then I look over halfway through training, they're like,
It's funny for me as well, because I've obviously coached quite a few people in our club, and I've tried bringing them up for matches and stuff. And the frustrating thing is the amount of times I've told them, "Cool, no table time leading up to the match, like don't do it, blah blah blah." And I'll look away for like 5 minutes. I'll look back, and they're just going hard as with someone. I have to run up and go, "What are you doing?"
It's impossible to resist, even if people come along with like they're a friend, they had no intention of arm wrestling, but their friend brings them along and they're just sitting in that room. It's like you're gonna be on the table at some point. You can't just sit in that room, because you'll get 30 people coming up going, just get on the table, come on the
Yeah, the impression of the max, right?
Yeah, that's right. When they see where everyone's having fun, and it's like, they go, "Oh no, I've never done it, and I'm worried I'll injure myself." And it's like, "Well, no, I'll show you how to do it properly, and we'll go through nice and easy." And the good thing about the club is that there are so many great members that are willing to spend the time to show somebody how it works, and how to cover basic fundamentals and allow that person to work at their strength level safely. And they explain, well, this is how we do a top roll. This is what's called a hook, and then the strength difference from when they first step up to that table to like 5 minutes later, and they're like 3 times stronger, 4 times stronger, just from some very basic positioning movements and adjustments. It's just, I absolutely love it, and you see it on their face as well. They're like, "Oh, this is really working," and it's like, yeah, and I'm like, you'll be able to beat all your friends now. Like, just with this knowledge, that your mates won't have any idea why you're winning, how you're winning, because they're going to be doing this,
Yeah.
and you're going to be using your whole body weight against them, and they won't understand how you're beating them.
Yeah, and I think that's a misconception a lot of people get, is the injury side of thing, right? Like everybody talks about the injuries. Everybody who doesn't really know arm wrestling talks about how you'll break your arm, blah blah blah. Out of the 7 years that I've been arm wrestling, the only injuries I've ever seen are from dudes who know what they're doing, like real strong dudes who know what they're doing, or someone who's just way too strong for themselves when they come into the club and they just go way too hard, right? But that I've seen once. Outside of that, it's the only injuries I see is people have already been doing it for 3-4 years, and they're willing to put themselves in situations and positions that they know is risky, and no one really pulls new people to the point where they're going to put enough pressure to injure them. Even when I've seen two new people jump on the table and go hard together, which we try not allowing, obviously, but sometimes they'll just go off to the side and do it. They never really injure themselves because they're just not, I guess, technically advanced enough or strong enough, have that raw strength to really do some damage, which, is nice.
It is one of those things. That's always when you've got a couple of new people and you run through some basics with both of them, and then you get somebody else to take over, and then 20 minutes later you look over and the 2 new people are on the table against you. It's like, hang on, no, that's not supposed to be happening. They're supposed to be working with the people who know what they're doing, not against each other. But they get excited and they want to test their strength and see how they go against each other. But it's like, hang on, you don't know what you're doing yet. This is
and today as well, I always feel guilty where you see a new person and they go to press or something, right? And you're like, that's a bad position, and you quickly stop them. But you can see they are frustrated because they think that position was about to win them, and you've just stopped them from being able to actually get the pin. So that always kind of makes me feel bad, but obviously it's the right call. Just don't let them do something silly. But yeah, always they look at you as if you just took this win from me, and it's like,
I let them get the win, but I'll explain to them afterwards why it's not a good idea to do it that way. Like I'll put very minimal. If they turn into a press and I know they're not doing it right, they don't know what they're doing. Like I'll be like, oh, okay, and I'll let them go down. I'll be like, okay, so that move there is very risky, and the reason why, and then I'll get into it. But yeah, it's. We've got a comment here from Swole Zach who says, I do table time every other week and arm wrestling specific bodybuilding training in between. That seems to work the best for me. And yeah, it seems to be a few people that subscribed to that same method. They'll come 1 week and then they'll have a week off and come again after that. And I especially think it's good for people who are new to the sport to do that, because especially if they go crazy hard on that first night. And I always tell people, like, you're gonna be having fun, but try not to go, ridiculous, because it's like 2.5 hours and they're giving it absolutely everything they've got. And it's like, imagine you're in the gym and you're trying to do a bicep curl, your heaviest bicep curl, for 2.5 hours straight. Like that's pretty much what you're doing right now. You're going to be really sore if you do this too much.
to be fair though, at this point, I feel like it's almost like an initiation thing for new people. It's kind of like, you know what, go hard, and then they have to deal with the whole, this is what it feels like, the soreness, like the DOMs from arm wrestling.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that, it's almost like you're going to sink or swim. You'll either fall in love with it and deal with the pain, or you'll be like, no, this is way too strenuous. And we had one of the guys was an electrician who I pulled at one of the events, the after pool events, and he was quite strong and had a lot of staying power. And I saw him again maybe a month or two later. I just happened to run into him at the shop. And I was like, oh, you should come down the club and everything. How'd you feel after the thing? And he's like, mate, my arms were so sore for like 4 days because I could barely do my job. He's like, I can't do this sport. He's like, I need my hands to be able to work, to be able to do all my electrician work. So yeah, there is a very long amount of time to get conditioned. And even still, like years in, if you go too hard, you can still the next day be like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still undecided of the concept that like arm wrestling only hurts for the first 5 years or whatever it is. I'm still not sure if it actually stops hurting after 5 years, or we just learn to like just deal with the pain, right? Like we just kind of can not have to deal with it anymore. So
yeah, it's I will recover from a Sunday training session, and I'd probably be 100% recovered by Thursday, but this year we did a couple of gym seminars that were on Monday nights, so it was like the next night, and within 5 minutes of pulling, I was like, oh, my bicep was killing me. It was like, just because I hadn't recovered obviously from the night before. I thought, oh, I should be okay. I'm 5.5 years in. I do this every single week. And then it's like, 5 minutes into the second day in a row, and I was like, oh, and you got the same pain that I do. It was right there in that tendon of the bicep.
like a year heel, that was brutal.
It was horrible. And the funny thing was that like it started happening to me, and then about 20 minutes later, you got the exact same thing. And then so I've had that same pain before. It's like that toothache pain, and I know it lasts for about an hour. And you could see like the progression of where I was hurting, because then my shoulder started hurting, and then like 20 minutes later, your shoulder started hurting. It was like, I'm like, yeah, you got about 40 minutes to go before you'll be all right.
Yeah. You never want to do arm wrestling 2 days in a row. I mean, as much as you think the next day, you're like, I feel great. You jump on the table, and after 5 minutes, you're like, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, I did that when it was in India, and I felt terrible because we had the event on a Saturday, and then the next day, like they took us out to one of the local clubs, and there was all these guys that were very excited to pull Ryan, and then I was the tag along, but to have anybody from another country when they're there, it's like, and they all wanted to get on with me, and I the first guy I think was quite strong, and I got that toothache pain, and I was like, oh my god, and I was sitting down like in a chair, just like when you're like holding your arm, like, and everyone's coming up, going, oh, can we get on the table? And I'm like, no.
It's so bad as well because it lures you into a false sense of security after about 30 minutes where it feels good again. You're like, I can jump on, and if you do, it's just you want to end yourself because it's just the worst pain.
It's a non-stop throb, isn't it? It's like that toothache pain that will not like settle, and it's just every heartbeat. It's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, please stop hurting.
I heard a story from like back in the day. Like this was probably before me and you started arm wrestling. But in the Adelaide club, there was a guy out in the country. He's pretty well known, but he doesn't really arm wrestle anymore. But his toothache pain from one of his first sessions was that bad, he ends up going to hospital. Obviously, there was no actual damage or whatever. It was just what we experienced. But his was just that extreme. They had to give him like pain medications and stuff to actually help him. Because he couldn't sleep or anything.
Wow, I haven't heard that. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. My favorite fatigue story is Richard from the club, who went, and I think him and Tim did like a 4-hour ridiculous session, and then Richard drove home, and like he had to drive with the steering wheel, like he couldn't get his arms up to turn the wheel. He had to pass the wheel with his fingers like this. And then when he got home, like his door handle was about there, and he couldn't lift his arm high enough to get his door handle, and he couldn't get out of the car, and he's honking the horn, and Tina, his partner at the time, is standing at the window like, what do you want? And he's like, come out here. And she's like, why? And he's like honking. He's like, come out here. She's like, come in here. He's like, I can't.
That's so good.
Oh, so good. Yeah. But no, it's horrible when that pain hits, and especially the first 30 seconds when you realize it's like, oh shit, oh no, it's coming. It's like, oh no, it's an hour of agony I'm about to experience here. Yeah, especially with the gym demo thing, where I'm trying to talk to as many people as possible about arm wrestling, and I'm in the middle of a sentence. So I had to stop talking because I was like, I just did so much pain in the bone. But you can't tell them you're in pain because then they won't want to do it.
Many stories from like, that's what I mean. I kind of love that as initiation because no one forgets the first time they arm wrestle and the pain they go through, like trying to sleep and stuff. Any arm wrestler, as soon as you say the toothache pain, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, apart from the Drew, apparently, he said he's never had such pains. Maybe I learned how not to have that happen. It's happened with us when we've done 2 days in a row, and it's on the second day that I've experienced it. So maybe you've been smart enough not to arm wrestle 2 days straight.
Well, I just got proven wrong, so I'll see you like that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, well, the Drew. I mean, hey, if he says, then that's how it is. The Drew.
Obviously, some people just get very lucky with like the connective tissue and stuff to not have that, or with just the ego's not there to be all like, I'm just going to go 100% against everybody. It's probably the smart way to do it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, yeah, mine is in that bicep tendon there, and it's mainly because in training, like when I'm teaching a lot of people, I'm defending a lot, so I'm allowing them to get that position, and then as they start getting better, I'm providing more and more resistance. So it's always sort of I'm getting work on that tendon, and yeah, the second night in a row, like that, the first guy or second guy or something, it was like, as soon as I went into that spot, I was like, oh no, there's that bloody pain again. So yeah, maybe it depends on your style. That Drew, you might have a different style of your training might be not as much instruction where you're in that position.
Well, I mean, speaking of injuries, I think this is why right now I'm trying to get into that market of the arm wrestling massage, right? So getting qualified to do the massage and focusing specifically on arm wrestlers and arm wrestling injuries, I feel like is a fun avenue to go into. The amount of stuff you learn, it's so frustrating to know you might have an injury like up here, but it's actually from like inflammation back in your tricep. So it's kind of interesting to do it. Plus, I feel like the market's kind of cool because there's no one really like strong enough in general massage to get into like the thickness and the tendons that arm wrestlers go through. So I kind of love the idea of getting into that with the added bonus of like finger and hand strength that I've gained from arm wrestling. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we've got a couple of comments here. We've got Franch from the club has says, when I first started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I went to shower afterwards and I realized I couldn't lift my arms to wash my hair. Yes, it's a incredibly brutal sport. Any sort of grappling, when you're throwing people's body weight around, whether it's arm wrestling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling, man, it's so taxing. And we've got the legend, the AWE co-owner, the man himself, the winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year award. It is none other than Dave Stockbridge, who is here to say AWE #1 competitor Stephen Carroll. And he's got a couple more comments there. This is awesome to come back home after work and see this. I love this idea of Stephen Carroll has for his new business. There you go. Yeah, that is what Stephen is doing. He's doing what's the massage discipline that you're subscribed under?
So right now it's relaxation massage. So that's like the minimum kind of qualification. I will be going towards the remedial stuff right now. But for now, I'm just trying to get a lot of self-taught education about specifically the arm wrestling stuff. Because even if I go into remedial or deep tissue or any of that stuff, it's a lot more focused on the typical injuries that most people are getting, which is like back, calves, like hip flexors, all that. Forearms is very specific. Like there's not a lot of sports, so the forearms and hands are the ones that are like the main focus. So it's going to be getting the qualification and then almost kind of coming up with my own style of really focusing on the arm wrestling side of stuff. So.
Yeah, it's always funny though. You're right about because I had an issue with my wrist. I think it was about there, and one of the guys at the gym is a remedial masseuse, and I said to him, "Oh, if you haven't, it's pain in my wrist," and then he starts like squeezing like down here, and he's like, "Does that hurt?" I'm like, "No," and then he's like, "What about there?" I'm like, "No," and then he's like, "What about here?" And I'm like, "No." Who was it? We had somebody last night that you did the same thing, and they were like, "Oh yeah," and you're like, "What about here?" And then they made that same sound. They were just like, "Ah!"
That was the last week with Taryn, and he was having a lot of problems with the ulnar. So I got back into like where it attaches back through the tricep. There's a spot, and you get into that, and it's the most excruciating pain. I've had people tell me they'd prefer to be tortured than getting that getting that massage. But I've noticed once you get in there, even after maybe like a couple minutes, they move their wrist and they're like, "Oh, like it feels incredible now." So I've always wondered why in like the big comps like East versus West and stuff, they always kind of have just like random dudes rubbing their arms between the rounds. And I'm like, well, why don't we have someone who actually like is a remedial masseuse or whatever, like someone who knows what they're doing? Because surely that would up the percentage and the odds of their athletes winning, right? If they have someone to be able to relieve some pressure or whatever between rounds, it could potentially be the difference between a win or a loss.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, have a couple of people in your corner, one to give you the coaching advice that you might need for some technical setups or whatever, and then the other person like working on your physicality of your arm. Dave Stockbridge says it's phenomenal that you're linking your passion with your income, and Taryn says that he almost vomited when Stephen massaged my tricep.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it was so fun. The reaction when you hit the right point, like, because you're searching for the. It's like, what about here? And they're like, no. And they're like, what about here? And like, no. And then when you get that spot, their feet like lift off the ground, and it's like,
I think it helps being a little bit of a sadist when it comes to the massage, honestly, because I think a lot of people, they would find that spot and be like, oh my God, sorry. And I kind of just lean into it and be like, oh, I found the spot now.
It's like, oh, this is where it hurts, is it? Does that hurt? Does that hurt? Dave says a professional cornerman in arm wrestling is a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely would benefit a lot of people, and maybe it would change the game in terms of being able to have longer matches and stay at your peak physical condition and not let your if something's blowing up or something's starting to niggle or hurt, to have somebody be instantly right there working on it, it could be the difference between winning and losing. So it is definitely
that with having like really good table IQ as well. So you're kind of the best corner man. You're not only the guy who can give massage and stuff, but you're also really educated, so you can give the advice and that. I don't see like why anyone wouldn't want to kind of get that in their corner. So,
nah, they don't need that. Forget the whole thing.
Yeah. But I'm sure, surely you'd be able to get some tax breaks or insurance or whatever, just because you're like, well, technically we have like a medical person on hand that's doing stuff for the athletes between rounds.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's the whole field of things that could come from that, but having a knowledgeable cornerman is definitely a benefit, and I can't see any detriment to that. But yeah, you're right. Usually it's a teammate or somebody or a friend they're doing this, and they're like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm stroking your arm, and it's kind of weird. But
that's the main thing. You're trying to get it so there's less blood in there, but yeah, you could be doing a lot more with that time.
That's right, absolutely. So we're very excited about this match that's coming up, and you're not only just having this right hand match, you're having a left one as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so the right hand will be against the number one over there. The left hand was just one person who's kind of put their hand up. The person who's put their hand up is a 60-kilo guy. So I'm not trying to discredit, obviously, but there is a big weight difference. So I know over there, they've kind of already given me the heads up. They're not big on the left arm. So I'm hoping to have that match. And then if my left arm's still good, just see how many people I can kind of pull through to, I guess I want to give more credit to the left arm. I'm one of those big believers that left arm should be treated just as important as right. So it'd be nice to give an opportunity to feel like, here, let me show you why left is important and a good arm to train.
I get a lot of people ask, like when I, explain that I do arm wrestling, and usually the first question, it's either, oh, is that a real thing? Or have you seen Devon? Or do you know Schoolboy? But then there are a lot of follow-up questions of, do you do both arms? And it's like, yeah. They're like, oh, aren't you right-handed though? It's like, yeah, but we're obviously going to use both arms. When the right arm gets exhausted, the left arm is, it's right there. Why would you not want to, double your fun?
Yeah, and exactly. In tournaments as well. Why go and pay to enter a tournament for just one arm? You basically, use half the time you get to arm wrestle. You might as well do both.
Absolutely. Darren Broad says that we're talking about the massage stuff here. It's like when a doctor hits your knee and you kick uncontrollably, but with life-changing pain when Stephen does it. I had done 10 sets of side pressure, back pressure, cup 2 days before the massage. Wow. Insane.
I think lasted about 2 seconds before I had to stop. So
2 seconds. It's changed his life. Tachund had me. Might have to get you on a separate day. This is this one that we're talking to Stephen about his upcoming match, but we'll reach out to me on Facebook and we'll schedule something. It's from Indonesia. Oh, great. There we go. Yeah, just let me know, mate, and we'll get something happening. But yes, great that people want to come on and talk about arm wrestling, which is always a fantastic thing. And it maybe is that one of your opponents, or maybe it's somebody that you might be facing over in Singapore there.
It could be a fun little chat.
Well, if it is, we'll schedule a thing. We'll get both of you on at the same time. But it is difficult to sort of to get the invite, get somebody on halfway through. So yeah. But Brandon Chan says that Taran agrees with left arm comment because he's so much stronger on his left arm than his right. It is a known fact that Taran is all in on left arm, barely trains his right, hates right arm, really, all against it. He wishes that left arm was the more popular arm, and Taran left arm broad, you could almost bill him.
Fight for you to get your left arm, I'll I'll make it happen, all right?
Taran wants to make left arm great again. I know he's leading that campaign. There's another way you can feel like you want to throw up there, Taran. I know it's the complete focus who don't know Taran hates left arm, but yeah, it's good fun for us to make fun of that. Nice knowing you guys. Oh, whoops. Uh, there we go. But yeah. So, in terms of idols in the sport, is there anyone that you sort of look up to at all?
So it's tricky. I'm a big fan of Devon personality wise. He's always great, and obviously like John Brzenk, he's killer. Funny enough, I think the best person I actually follow the most of and focus on their training and stuff is Giannis Mullins. I feel like out of everybody in the sport, or at least that I've followed, his training methodology kind of just makes the most sense to me. And out of all the top dudes, like almost everywhere you see, their body shape changes wildly, right? Like you can tell like when they're on, when they're off. It's always just such a crazy change. Giannis Amolin's kind of the only dude that has kept a pretty similar physique his whole career. So I kind of argue that he might be one of the only dudes that even if he's on stuff, he's not on a lot of stuff. So his training advice is clearly very good for potentially a natural athlete. So he's probably the guy I look up to the most. I do obviously love Levan, just because it's kind of cool to have someone who's just that monstrously strong that he can pull anyone and just destroy them. His match with Devon obviously was amazing. But yeah, they're probably the guys I look up to the most, I would say.
Yeah. What about the potential match with Jerry Caderet and Levine? That's what's being talked about at the moment.
I'm so excited. I think if anyone has a shot against Levine right now, it's Jerry. Jerry's just got that stopping potential, and as we've seen from Levine, that stop, if that match goes more than 30 seconds or something, he starts gassing and his health starts kind of catching up to him. So I believe like out of everybody, Jerry's probably got that best shot of putting him and making him have that war. If he can get this, like if Jerry can get that stop and make that war happen, I think he's got a real chance of beating Levine. On the other side of thing, I think Levine is so ridiculously strong that there's a likelihood that Jerry gets injured in the match. I think if Jerry gets that locking position with his shoulder behind it and stuff, Levine may just be strong enough to come forward and bust that wrist back or cause some damage. And in that case, then obviously Levine just takes it. So it should be very exciting for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the match to make at this point in time. You think Jerry Caderet coming off such a fantastic performance against Alex Kadecha, who I had actually tipped to win that match because I had thought if you were going to put together anybody, if you could go into a lab and be like, all right, let's design the ideal style and person to be able to combat a flop wrist press, you'd come out with Alex Kadecha. It was like, tall, long forearm, incredibly big, incredibly powerful, strong, but Jerry still got the job done, and credit to him.
Yeah, I just really, I love the flop wrist press. There's something about I could never do it myself because it feels disgusting to actually try flopping someone. But I respect the style a lot because I believe that was the style that was the most hated before the King's move, right? The King's move comes in now, and that's kind of right now the most hated style. No one likes it. They're trying to change rules for it, blah, blah, blah. But that flop wrist was kind of there before that as the grossest style of arm wrestling that everybody disliked. I kind of love it, right? You're taking away, you're going, this is the fundamental of arm wrestling. Let's throw that out the window. And we give everything just in order to get that shoulder committed. So I respect it. I think a flop wrist presser could potentially be the best style if you're strong enough. If you can connect everything, it kind of beats everything, right? Because you're going, cool, your bicep kind of has to stop me. Like your bicep is stopping my entire frame going on your arm. So yeah, I do really respect the idea of what Jerry's kind of doing, and it should be very interesting to see that go against someone as strong as Levine, who does have that bicep potential to stop it.
Yeah, I love when you've got somebody who's a specialist in something, and then you've got somebody who is the beast, the almighty, the number one ranked guy who's undefeated in Yovan, and it's like, all right, well, we've got somebody who's very very specialized in this one thing. I'd just love to see how you combat against that. And I would have loved to have seen Michael Todd versus Levan, a few years ago when Michael was right at his peak, for the same reason. It's like, well, Michael Todd is, he has this unique open arm top roll King's move. I would have loved to have seen, or how does Levan combat that, and how does it work? And just to say, okay, well, he's very very specialized in this. we'll put him against the best guy in the world, and we'll see like how to beat it. Because if you're the number one, you're the best guy. Like how does this equation get solved? That I think that was a slightly missed opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, we did get to see Devon attempt the King's move against Levan, right? And then Levan just randomly pulled out a flop press out of nowhere, and everybody's like, "What? What is this?" So it would have been cool to see Levan do that against someone who is very specific on the King's move, because who knows if Levan's like press would have actually been strong enough to stop Michael when he was in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who do you think was a better Kings move, Devon or Michael?
I definitely think Michael. I think Michael's King's move wouldn't work against Devon just because Devon's got the stylistically advantage, right? But I think if they both ended up in like a King's move position somehow and both had like matching webbing or whatever, I think Michael would have the strength there and just the overwhelming dominance in that position. So
Yeah, it was a question I would have loved to have seen get answered when Michael he's on his comeback. He's won his most recent matches in fine form, but he did have a bit of a dip, and I think that it'd be great to see if he can reach those elite upper levels again. And but yeah, that match was sort of the one to have made. Back in the WAL when Michael had beaten Devon for the hammer, and he was very dominant then. It was like, man, that was like the ideal time to make that match, but unfortunately, it didn't come together.
So what's your opinion on Styles, I guess, getting nerfed, as you'd say? So, for example, stuff like the King's move and that, when people get to the point where they believe it's too strong and they try changing rules in order to hinder or advance other styles.
Yeah, I was always against changing anything for it, really, apart from if it's a very obvious position that. How can I say this succinctly? By not banning it, you're preventing people from learning the abilities to combat that. And it may take over as the dominant thing for a short period of time until people figure out, oh, well, this is what I have to do to beat it. I've got to climb and regrip and climb and regrip and get the position, and maybe that starts working as a counter, but then the King's mover adjusts what they're doing to combat what they're doing. So I can see a lot of progression that would be missed if the rules got changed, where it was like, oh, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You can't do that. I think the rules are fairly well balanced now with the shoulder not being allowed beneath the table. And I'm glad that they've updated that rule so you don't get a warning anymore. It's just an instant foul. Like if your shoulder dips beneath, it's instant foul. I don't think all organizations have adopted that yet, but yeah, because if you're just getting a warning, like you could just sit on that, like, and keep popping up and down on it. But it was almost, and I liken this to I watch a lot of Street Fighter tournaments, which is not related to arm wrestling, but it was the same thing with that, where they would get a character that would be introduced that would have a certain ability, like a healing factor or some kind of crazy special move, and of course, all the people who were in the scene would be complaining about it. Oh, it's overpowered, it's too strong. But if they don't ban it, then people eventually learn how to combat that and how to look for when people are trying to set it up or how they can defeat it. And that's what I like about the sport, is that it's always that progression and the counters to counters to counters. And it's like people have come up with, Michael Todd, the master of it. He was sort of the first guy that was really known for that. And it's like he's winning matches with that. But, now people have learned how to combat that to a point where he had a dip in his career. I know he had some injuries and stuff, but it's still like not nowhere near as dominant as it used to be. It's not like everyone is now King's moving only because that's the way to win every match. So it's fun to find these progressions, and it's like, say if you flop wrist press, it's like, well, how do you beat a flop wrist press? Well, you got to learn how to do it. It's like, how do we do it? Well, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, and eventually somebody will figure it out, and then they start beating the flop wrist presser, and then the flop wrist presser has to adjust what they're doing, and it's just the sport progresses and progresses, and you see that with every sport, and it's probably best examples with let's say the MMA world, where when your very first UFC events, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was dominating everything because no one knew what the hell it was. It's like, what are they doing? He's rolling on the ground, and he's and then all of a sudden the other guy's tapping out. It's like, what even happened? What? But then the wrestlers learnt enough Jiu-Jitsu to not get submitted, and so then they took over as the dominant force for quite a lengthy period of time, because they could take the jiu-jitsu guy down, which is where the jiu-jitsu guy wanted to be, but they knew enough to not get submitted, and they could win the match through ground and pound. And then the kickboxers learnt enough wrestling to not get taken to the ground, and then they started winning fights, knocking people out on the feet. And then you get this amazing progression of, well, okay, what's the new thing? What is the new technique that's going to be implemented that's going to allow you to win matches? Wall and stall was a thing for a while, where people would just press their opponent against the cage, and you'd see Randy Couture's dirty boxing style, where he'd have somebody pressed against the cage, and it was all these little punches and little elbows, and just tiring them out over a few rounds. And then that became a thing, and then people learned how to whizzer off of the cage. And but at the moment, it seems to be the low calf kick is one of the things that is very effective, that people are finding hard to combat. And that I mean, the leg kick to the thigh was always the one that people were looking out for, but now it's the one that's going for the calf, and it's causing people to win. It's allowing people to win fights utilizing that technique. But now people are trying to find the counters to that. So I feel it's the same with arm wrestling, where, and if it had just stayed as, okay, let's just do this, then it would not exist as a sport. It's like, yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely couldn't agree with you more. I think hindering the sport, like, we're at such a pivotal point with arm wrestling that it's still evolving every day. We're still trying to get more people. I mean, it's starting to actually blow up and take over. The idea of hindering any sort of move, all you're doing is you're basically just shrinking it down and making it less and less, like, adept, I guess. Like, there's less combination of what you can do. There's less like of an entertainment factor, because the more you knock down things that people don't like, eventually, as you said, we've got just two-dimensional matches. They're just going to look the same every time. There's not going to be so many unique styles. And it's 100%, like, I think it's one of the best things about any sport is kind of learning and trying to figure out your own counter to certain things. Before I kind of really got into arm wrestling, I had a really big background in just like video games and card tournaments. I used to play competitive Magic the Gathering. I used to go to like big tournaments and stuff like this. And one of the funnest things was seeing what the current meta was, what people were kind of playing and stuff like that, and trying to come up with your own counters and combos to it. So I think this exact same thing is true with arm wrestling, right? If you have someone, even just in your club, someone might figure out a lane that you go, man, I can't deal with it. No one can deal with it. Eventually, someone's going to go, I think I've figured out what deals with it. And then it just evolves and people become even more skilled from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I love that progression in sport, and seeing how it evolves over time. I had a good question here from Bin Ladder with a Vin Diesel profile photo. Says that AWE ever thinking Pacific Inland tournaments find some talent, have holiday. It's uncharted. Who's the best in Fiji or Samoa? We'd love to do stuff like that. It would be tremendous. And I know that one of the goals that we've got is to be able to highlight the people that don't usually get a spotlight in the arm wrestling scene. And we know that there's some absolute killers out there in the world that have never had the ability to get onto the world stage. And we'd love to have a hand in sort of highlighting those people. So just hopefully one day we'll be able to do exactly that. And Brandon says that he will cry if he gets calf kicked. I think most people would. It's the debilitating technique. It just shuts people's legs down. And if you ever saw Henry Cejudo get kicked in the leg, his leg just went dead and he couldn't stand on it. That's crazy. But Joel Hewitt, the man we were talking about earlier today, one of those monsters that is getting into the arm wrestling world, and he says that he's morbidly obese. So, okay. Right. Well, are you still 150 kilos? I think you probably lost some weight over the last couple of weeks being sick. But Swole Zach says, I'm playing Magic the Gathering Arena right now. There you go. Well, yeah, so it's Street Fighter and Magic the Gathering. But yeah, it is fun to see the progression in technique. And I know that in the jiu-jitsu scene, even different clubs will favor certain techniques. And one of the guys from B Team was saying that because they really do a lot of leg lock stuff, and then he would go to another club where they're not as focused on that. And he's like, I'm leg locking everybody. Like everyone's getting leg locked by me because they don't train it. But then they had to learn and I had to explain what's the counter to what I'm doing. And then, they progressed their skill and knowledge through that. And they were doing stuff to me that I wasn't used to. Maybe there was a lot of front headlocks, or maybe there was a lot of arm locks. And it's like you're passing knowledge between each other and improving the game overall. Because you look at the progression of anything, grappling or arm wrestling or the skill level in every sport, it continues to get bigger and better as people find new techniques and new strategies.
Exactly right. No, I think it's the thing that keeps a lot of sports alive and just really entertaining, right? No one's going to stick with any sport if it's just the same thing over and over and over again. So I think it's just one of those necessary things that we need to keep alive in arm wrestling. And I think the worst thing we can be doing is banning certain techniques or banning movements, because that just shrinks the sport.
Yeah. How did you discover that you were more dominant in the hook style?
Well, see, I'm not even confident that I am, honestly. I think every year that I've arm wrestled, I've gone from a top roller to a hook puller to a top roller to a hook puller, which I actually think is kind of good, because I personally believe height makes a big difference in what style typically you should go into. If you've got that shorter leverage, obviously a hook is the best lane to go, because if you can bring that match low and inside, then the leverage is going to be an advantage. If you're very tall, then obviously a top roll, because you're going to have that height advantage. You're going to be able to outclimb your opponent, and it's going to be very hard to, for other people to hold on to. In my weight class, in the super heavyweights, I'm 6'1". I sit pretty much, I'm going to be versing people shorter than me. I'm going to be versing people taller than me. So it's hard for me really to commit hard into one style, whether it be hook or top roll. Hook is one of those things, though, for me, just feels comfortable. Like, that feels better for me to hook. It feels better than top roll. But I'm never going to really be able to out-hook dudes that are shorter than me and have, like, a stronger bicep, right? I go inside, and it's like, cool, I'm basically giving you the leverage advantage. So I think I try to sit in that style where if I need to, I can still have other lanes and stuff to access.
No press at all in your game?
Honestly, I started developing a press when I got down, because I recently did that big cut down to 107 kilos, back to like 120 or something now. But when I got to 107, suddenly I started magically accessing a press. Don't know where it came from. Everybody was shocked. It started actually beating dudes I couldn't beat before. It was weird. I think it's because my chest shrunk. And with a smaller chest, my arm could get more inside my body, so I could access the press. Now that I've put the weight back on and my bench and stuff's gotten higher again, my chest's gotten wider, I just can't seem to get that commitment anymore.
Yeah, well, that's similar to what Lachlan Adair was talking about when he's dropped down from, 113 or something down to the 105 weight class. And he said the same thing. Yeah, that size of his chest and shoulder was hampering his movement ability. And then when he's moved down in weight, he's like, oh, I've got all this freedom to get into these positions that I couldn't get into before.
So yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things. Like, you have to build your style around kind of where your body is good. Like, obviously there's always going to be exceptions. There's going to be the tall guy who hooks. There's going to be the short guy who top rolls. I just think for new people especially, kind of work with where your leverages sit. Like, if you're super tall, I wouldn't go, cool, put all your eggs in the hooking. And if you're super short, I wouldn't be like, no, just top roll. I would say start off working with kind of where your body's designed to, because that's going to be the thing that will help you progress the quickest. It'll be the thing that will help you start winning quick. And then once you're at that point where you're comfortable, you understand styles, that's where you should kind of start going into finding your own lane, maybe finding a unique style that suits you. So.
Absolutely. Hello to Jaquil, who's popped into the chat there as well. Great to see you in here. And yeah, it is one of the things that seeing with new people when they come to the club is where they choose to develop their skill set. And, when they get on the table for the first time, like I always start off with the top roll, like in terms of instruction. I think it just covers the fundamentals of movement, of bag pressure, and it's probably the simplest in terms of once you've grasped the knowledge of understanding of this, now we can look at some other, instead of going outside, you're turning inside, and then I very briefly will go over the press because I suck at it, and I'll explain how to do it. I know how to do it, I just can't do it for crap. But it is fun for me to see somebody who and I think maybe this guy would be the ideal top roller. But then 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, you're getting on the table with them, and they're hooking and they feel really strong doing it. And it's like, oh, okay, that, and then they say, yeah, I just felt like I just couldn't coordinate the top roll movement, but I just kept feeling like I wanted to turn inside. And it's like, well, that's great if you feel that way naturally, if you're naturally coordinated to do that, then follow that path, because that's where you're going to get the fastest results. Because even if, like for me, if they feel weaker doing that, like say I'm explaining the top roll and then they say, yeah, but I feel like I want to do this and it feels weaker to me. But for them, it's more coordinated and they neurologically understand it better. It's like, we'll do that and learn the game around getting strong at the things that make the most sense for you.
Yeah, no, of course.
Drew is having some fun asking what Facebook and Instagram is. All the cool kids use it. All the cool kids do use it, or they used to. But now they're still on it. The cool kids have probably moved on. But Dankius Taran Left Arm Broad has said, a top roll, is that a new move? Didn't you try to top roll Brett Coots in the third round? Stretch Joel Hewitt says, thoughts on pullers that can only pull in one style, like presses that can't hook or top roll. Does it make more sense to focus on one lane or have more weapons in the arsenal? What do you think, Stephen?
That's a great question, and I've had this conversation with quite a few people. I think if you're going to commit to one lane, you better make sure that lane is powerful enough that you want to overcome that counter lane, right? If you're, like, let's say a high hand top roller, typically the counter that is a low hand hook puller, because they're going to attack that part of the wrist that you're not really guarding with your pronation. You better hope that that high hand top roll is so strong that even if someone goes to low hand, they're not going to be able to actually get in and like turn your hand over. It's pretty cool to see, though. It's one of those things where if we somehow numerically put someone's stats up, like let's say the max level of like skill points you can put in something is like 100. If you put all those points into, like, let's say a top roll, and someone puts like 80 points into something that counters your style, you're still going to lose every time. So I think it's good to be diverse, but it also is fine just to go down to one style. It really depends on kind of where your body sits and what's like appropriate for you. But yeah, no, I do like the idea of diverse. I think if you're just like an absolute, like, if you're super tall, for example, let's say you're like 7-8 foot or something ridiculous, you probably can just commit to being a top roller and never have to worry about anything else, because the odds are you're not going to come against someone who's also top rolling that's taller than you. Just like if you're super short, but like, you've got a strong wrist, you may as well just commit to hooking, because you're not really going to verse people much shorter than you and have that leverage advantage. But I think it's for the middle ground people, so the people that are going to verse people taller and shorter, they kind of need to be diverse. You can still snowball down to one lane and just hope that like, you're strong enough in that. But I think it's helpful to be diverse if you're going to be in that mid-range, constantly versing people that have the leverage height on you, or the leverage, like, it's short to their arm than you. So
yeah, I like the idea, and it's a good question from. Am I hearing myself? Oh,
no, you're
hang on, let me turn my volume down. I don't know why that's not happening. How's that?
Yeah, you're fine.
No, you're myself. Right. Sorry, I just need one second. I'll into my headphones.
No stress.
I'm getting a audio echo on my end. can talk to the kids for
it. But yeah, no, I definitely do really like that question though of the styles. I've had quite a few people kind of ask me the same question, and I think me and Stretch have had this conversation a few times where I've told him he can just commit to top rolling. He can commit to just the idea of top roll, and it doesn't mean you should commit to, let's say, a high hand top roll. You should probably learn to commit to both a high and low hand, depending on like what style you come against. But just the idea of being like, all I'm going to do is go up and top roll. If you're that tall, you can get away with it. Like, you're not really going to have too much of a disadvantage on people taller than you. And it's same with someone like Taryn's another great example of a hook puller. Since he's got such a smaller leverage on the forearm, there's not really going to be too many problems with him going to a hook with someone who's going to have a shorter leverage and have that advantage of being close to their body. So I think it's fine depending on how your body type is to commit one lane.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at the top 10 guys in the world, and you'd probably say that the majority of them would be specialists in one discipline. Would you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at there's definitely some people at that top level that do. Like, you look at like Devin, he's good at, like, he kind of has a lot of different lanes that he can access. But then you look at people like Michael Todd, right? He's rarely going in the inside. He does have an inside lane, which he goes to every now and then, but that's not what's winning in matches. It's that outside lane. Or you look at Jerry, where it's just like all inside, and that's all he's committing to. I think at the top level, it's still diverse enough. Like, Devin's one of those dudes where he is tall, but he versus dudes both taller and shorter than him, so he needs that diversity. But yeah, there's obviously always going to be exceptions to that rule. But I do like that there are people that are just one style pullers, and there's going to be people that are diverse, and there's no real winner of which one's better.
Yeah, I really like with arm wrestling that people will develop. You got your three main styles of fundamentals: top roll, hook, and press. But then people will come up with their own nuanced techniques within that, and they'll have maybe they're a top roller, but they do like a high hand top roll, or they do a low hand, or they do this thing, or they have some sort of different, which is they've created throughout their own genetic setups. I'm hearing myself twice. I'm just gonna try to get used to it. You're hearing me okay though?
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Oh, great. I've just got to get used to hearing myself speak twice.
Phone, that may help you. Hang on. That might help.
Okay. What was that?
Oh, I just turned the volume down on my phone, so it might not echo.
Oh, it's okay. It's all good. Yeah. Having that one style. I've seen it though in matches where somebody has gone all in on one technique, and then their opponent just happens to be better at that. And if you're a hook puller, that's what you do, and that's you've spent all of your training, all of your technique and game planning around getting that hook position and driving through. But they are just stronger at it. You're kind of lost. It's like, what do I do here? So I don't know.
And that's always the risk, right, of going down that one lane, is you better hope that one lane is so strong that it doesn't matter if someone else is going there. Because that there's nothing worse than you being like, just a full all to the balls of the walls hook puller, and then you verse someone that goes to a hook and beat you. You kind of go, well, where are my options now? Like, I know, like, your top roll or anything else isn't going to be able to match that. So you kind of just have to like bite the bullet and accept it. Where if you're more diverse, at least then you go, cool, well, I'm just not going to do that next round, and you hope to change things. You might actually find a lane that works. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple of comments here, people saying that they're hearing an echo as well. They're probably just getting the same thing that I'm getting. Do you happen to have headphones?
I don't know how to change that, but I can see my volume going up when you talk. So,
do you happen to have headphones at all, Matt?
Not that I can plug into my phone, I don't think. Actually, maybe 2 seconds. Let's try this. I have a headset next to me that may work.
All right, let's give it a go. Apologies, everyone. Let's go. Let me test. I think how does that sound? I'm not hearing the echo anymore. This is great.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, the headphones are working.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, awesome. All right. That's good. It's so hard to talk when you can hear yourself like on a delay, like 2 seconds later. It's like, oh man.
Yep, sorry about that, everybody. That's my bad.
No, that's fine. It's just weird that it started happening like an hour into the stream. It's just very very
No
strange.
idea.
Um, so let me just jump back on the comments here. Joel was very happy with that answer. So yes, I think it was a very succinctly answered question there. And Taryn Left Arm Broad says, my forearm is long for my height. It's my hand that is really short. It's the worst combination. My elbow to wrist is almost the same as Hamza, but my hand is the length of somebody a foot shorter than me. Yeah, it is difficult, isn't it, Taryn? But that's one of those things that you've developed a game that suits your body type and your body style, which is that incredibly strong hook. And despite having, not having the big hand, the longer fingers of leverage, you get into that hook position and drive sideways, and it's like it's good luck holding on to that. The power that you've been able to generate is next to it's elite level.
So what's interesting, Matt, me and Taryn were kind of discussing the other day, because I think I figured out one of the things that do benefit him a lot. So that internal rotation that I was talking about, right, and how I was saying that if I'm too low, it kind of hits into their bicep, not their wrist. Taryn's hand is small enough that no matter how he sets up, he's always going to be chopping into their wrist, not their forearm. So I think that actually gives him a big advantage, even though, yes, the hand's short, so it's hard to get the containment and the hook in. Once he's in there, though, that hand is going to be inside their hand. So any sort of chop or rotation he uses is going to always target exactly kind of where he wants it to target. So,
yeah. So how would you combat that? Like if you're going up against somebody who is a dedicated ace hook puller, that's what they're going to do. They don't do anything different. What's your setup look like for that?
So that would be me getting away from them, right? Like the typical setup for a top roller. I'm lucky enough to have kind of big hands, so the more I can kind of like fold my hand inside and open it up once the straps go on, the better, because it makes their hand have to be more open and try to hold on to the. I think a lot of people kind of just need to learn that idea that if someone's going to be better than you on a hook, just try not letting them get into the hook. Like there shouldn't be a game plan around, no, once I'm here, it should be like, just don't get there in the first place, right? Like do all your prep and training to avoid getting into the scenario. One of the guys I'm coaching now, he keeps kind of going down that lane where he's like, well, I should train for if I get into the hook with this person. And it's like, well, just don't get there. Like just only train pronation, train that setup, train like everything you possibly can to avoid it happening in the first place. Because the odds are, if they're a dedicated hook puller, once they get there, it doesn't matter what sort of training you've got, you're probably going to lose that match.
Yeah, that's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, they're trying to implement their game plan, and you're trying to stop them from getting there. And but yeah, if you're trying to match their best technique with your in the exact same technique, that's where you're probably going to lose. But yeah, it is one of the interesting aspects of the sport that people on that setup, they're trying to manipulate everything in their favor for their technique. So, if you're a high hand top roller, maybe you're kicking your wrist forward, you're keeping your hand really high, you're climbing up over their hand as much as you possibly can before that go. So on that go, you've already, sort of settled into the position that you need. Whereas somebody who's, low hand, obviously they're going to be in a different frame of hand position, or if they're a hook puller. Can you talk to us a little bit about like thumb depth and where you should be trying to set up with if you're going against somebody who is is a hook puller and you're a top roller?
Yeah, no worries. So like as a top roller, your main goal is first you need to distinguish if this person is a low or a high hand hooker. And by that, I mean, are they hooking with all their pressure coming down through their pinky, or are they hooking with all their pressure up through the top knuckle? Most people I find, they usually top roll through that low hand. And if that's the case, as a top roller, you always want to be putting your pressure into where they're putting their pressure. So if they're putting their pressure low, you want to match that with like a low hand top roll in order to stop their wrists from being able to actually turn you in. So that's probably step number one. Once you figured that out, that's where you can kind of decide where the depth is. You always want to be as far away from them as possible, because you want their hands to be extended as much as you can. But depending on if you're going to start with your wrist posted or pull back into a deep low hand, that's going to depend on what style of hook puller you are. And this is why I kind of always teach people, if you're going to be just a top roller, learn how to top roll on both a low hand and a high hand. Just like if you're a hook puller, always learn how to hook high and hook low, just because if you're going against someone who's smart enough, they're going to change that lane that's going to counter you. And if you can't counter them back, then it's kind of game over.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I just wanted to bring up one of your matches here, which is you versus the Berserker Laspotta. From a while
Oh
ago,
no, yep.
it is from a while ago, and I
Yeah, it
haven't
is.
seen this for a long time, so I'm not sure how it's going to play out. But
Spoiler alert, I lose.
oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't play this one, but I think you have some moments in here, don't you? We'll
Yeah,
have a
no,
look.
I do get, I think, one, maybe two pins on him. I can't really remember.
Okay, so what are you looking at right here? You know, he's a low hand top roller usually. So what sort of setup were you going for here?
Yeah, so I think for me, I was all about just trying to get that match inside. I wanted to hook him in because I know as soon as the match is inside, I can get him. Right now, I was actually setting up a little bit lower because he likes to dump into that low hand, and I was just trying to kind of cover and take over that that bottom wrist. Honestly, not the best strategy looking back, but yeah, that was kind of the goal for this one.
Oh, so we'll see how it plays out. So you got the back pressure, you got the drag there. You did pull him across to your side. You're sort of in a neutral position here, but you have brought him all the way to your side of the table. Let's see what happens. Oh, he's turned it over, and you've gone to the bicep. Yeah.
And that was my problem there. What I was initially, where I know I messed up, is I kept trying to bring the match backwards because I could feel I was winning that lane every time, that back pressure lane. Every time I was going back, I was getting my shoulder out of the match. In hindsight, it would have been better just to be like, well, I don't even worry about the back pressure. I should stay up with my arm and keep that frame there.
Right, yeah, you can see. I mean, you've got that big hit that's dragged him back all the way to your end of the pad, but right here is when he manages to turn that into that pinky finger and roll it over. So yeah, you did the right move here. You brought your shoulder forwards, but his second hit is what got you through.
Yeah, and you can see in this match, his shoulder stayed forward the entire time. My shoulder went back when I dragged, so that was what I think cost me these matches.
Okay. So same idea with the setup here?
Yeah, this one, I think I remember specifically, this one I was trying to load the cup a lot more on the go because I think that last one, even though I was going back, my cup was already compromised. I think this one I just thought more about actually loading that cup, and I think this one I keep my shoulder behind the match a bit more.
Okay, let's have a look. Oh, very nice. Look at this.
Yeah.
There's a pin for you, yeah.
But you saw my shoulder didn't go backwards at all. I didn't hit backwards. I kind of just maintained position. I went straight sideways. If I had done that every match, I would have potentially won.
Okay. Yeah, that was good. I mean, the back pressure, and then you've driven sideways and rolled through. So he's going to make an adjustment, obviously, to that.
Yeah,
you've gone for a big hit.
See,
there.
Once again, I hit backwards.
That's a good shot, actually, of Lass screaming in your face there.
Yeah.
But it looks like you weren't able to drag him as much. I think he was ready or prepared for that big back pressure surge.
Yeah, his table IQ is definitely not something that can be argued. He is very good at taking advantage of lanes.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. Next round. Well, you didn't have the big back pressure hit on this one.
Yeah, I actually stayed with it, and I managed to get the hand. But I believe the hits from this one was too much.
Okay, let's have a look. You turned it inside. Oh, you got your shoulder there. It looks like you're trying to press.
Oh, this is where I got fouled for shoulder blocking.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Whole table is flying everywhere.
Yeah.
He's holding strong with that bicep.
Yeah, and then I got him.
Elbow came off the foul. Yeah, it's a restart. All right, so you're on one foul.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then, see, the rip back is what did my own hand in. I basically gave my own hand for that back hit, which is just hindsight.
Oh, yeah, well, this is how we learn, isn't it? This is
exactly right. And this is why now that back pressure hit, I don't usually go to anymore. I try staying up with my frame and getting hand control.
Right. So, yeah, you can see you've pulled back. He's just gone pretty much straight sideways.
Exactly. So my bicep just immediately gets compromised due to the drag, and he stayed up and turned my hand over. So, But he's also great at getting in your head as well. So I think it was also just the lead up to the match and everything else that makes you sometimes make the dumb mistake over and over. As much as you like to say, I'm definitely going to do the right thing. If this happens, this happens. Once the match and the adrenaline's there, a lot of that stuff kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, your heart's beating fast, your mind's racing, and Yes, but even if you win the round, it's like, yeah, you can't really focus on, okay, well, it's a very unique experience. That's why I tell people to have matches as much as they possibly can, because the more often you put yourself in that position, the more likely that you'll, when you get to the big stage or something that's very, very important, if you've had a lot of club matches, you're going to be a lot more comfortable getting up on that table in front of the big stage on the moment than if you have had very, very minimal matches, just been doing training, and then you get up and you get that opportunity. Maybe you're stronger than your opponent, but you just get lost in the moment and you actually get beaten.
And I mean, I think no matter how much experience you are, this is why I argue why like a corner man is so crucial, right? Like you look at every, like even martial arts, right? When it comes to UFC or boxing, whatever, you need that corner man that can see things that you're not going to be able to catch in the moment. Like whether it be because of adrenaline or just where your viewpoint is, you need someone experienced enough in your corner to be like, hey, I know you probably didn't notice this or you didn't feel this, but this is what they're doing and this is what you need to do to counter.
Yeah, and then massaging them at the same time.
Exactly right.
If you could choose to have somebody in your corner, who would you pick?
Man, that's a tough one. Are you talking from our state or anyone in the world?
Anyone in the world, at any time.
Whoa, that's a tough one. As I said, Giannis is always like my go-to when it comes to like the technical side of things and who I love to watch. But I feel like Devin kind of does the best in terms of being able to get in their head and know the right way to, like, I guess, manipulate it as much as possible to get the win. So it would probably have to go to Devin, even though like I would just immediately become the most hated arm wrestler in the world because I don't have that charisma to make up for the way he cheats. It's still probably the way if you want the win.
Have you seen his most recent match with Chance?
Yes, I watched that. I actually kind of loved it because I think this is the first match I've ever seen where his opponent got into his head. Chance did an absolutely amazing job just triggering Devin and making him as angry as possible. And I kind of loved it. Don't get me wrong, Devin did, like, it was pretty shocking how bad Devin kind of reacted to it all. But it was also funny because I don't think Chance took it in the wrong way. Chance was happy by the looks of it that he was getting into Devin's head and pissing him off. So, yeah, it was just one of those things. It was just great to finally see Devin on the receiving end of that, like, frustration and anger and, everything else. So,
I think Chance, well, he said halfway through the match, he's like, you can do whatever you want to me. I already have exceeded my goals here. I've got a 1-0 on you, Devin. Like, no matter what else happens, like, I'm happy.
Yeah.
It was very funny, Chance's reactions to all of that, and he didn't seem bothered at any point, did he? It was just like he was just smiling the whole time. It was like he was having a great time.
He has great composure, and I kind of love it. And I think, like, out of every arm wrestler I've seen, he seems to match the kind of way that I handle those situations as well, where if people are yelling or carrying on or whatever, I get happy knowing that I'm kind of annoying them because I just find it funny, right? Like one of my favorite matches ever was back in the day. I think you would remember it was against Leon.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, he was getting so mad at me, but I just kept laughing at it because I just thought it was funny. I'm just like, okay, well, you're getting really mad. That's just kind of, it's great on my end. I mean, he obviously felt he was getting cheated and whatever it is, but I just kind of enjoyed that moment of being like, I'm getting yelled at, they're carrying on and stuff, but I can just be happy that I'm not the one in that situation that's getting like pissed off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is an interesting aspect of the sport that, like everyone's that I've experienced, and the majority of matches that I see, everyone's very respectful, very supportive, and very friendly, and it's almost very difficult to go up and to generate that. Build up to want to overpower and beat somebody, well, at least for me anyway. It's like I feel like I feel guilty. I feel bad if I win a match. It's like because I want people to do well and I want them to succeed. And it's like if I've beaten them, I've stopped them from doing that.
Well, that's why I love versing the people that do get really mad and yell at you because that feeling goes away. You know what I mean? If you're versing the nicest, most respectful guy, yeah, you're going to feel bad because you're like, man, like, I don't want to be the one to take this from you. But if you have someone who's yelling at you, calling you names and stuff, you're like, oh, well, I don't feel bad anymore. Like, I just want the win now. So.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an interesting aspect of it, and I was surprised by Devon's behaviour during that match with Chance, because it's like, this isn't how most people act in arm wrestling. Like this, you get all the way through, like throughout the whole world, every club I've been to, everyone that I've met, that I've spoken to, everyone's lovely, friendly, nice. People send me videos of how I improve technique and stuff like that, and even the comments we're getting, people saying, "Oh, maybe you could try this and do that and get better." Everyone's trying to support each other to get better and better. And then on the table, even the funniest things for me is like, I think it was Devon and Michael. They had their match at King of the Table. And then like 10 minutes after the match, which Devon won, they're on the table in the back, and Devon's showing Michael like exactly what he did to be able to beat him. And he's like, you've got to get stronger here because this is how I got through. And it's like, what other sport would you ever see with, it's like you get two boxers and it's like, they're not in the ring afterwards going, so when I did this, and you like, what I mean? It's just crazy.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like this one, I mean, I've talked to people a long time about like Devon's one of those guys where I think if he wasn't as charismatic he is, because he is a very charismatic, likable dude, he would probably be the most hated person in the sport. Because the way he sets up and stuff is so frustrating. The things he gets away with, the refs and stuff are so frustrating. I feel like because like he's charismatic, so people kind of let him get away with it and just think it's amazing. But I could not imagine being the guy who's having to arm wrestle him, right? I could not imagine how frustrating it'd be to be across from him, losing everything in the setup, the ref kind of just being like, and then anytime you go to be like, oh, I don't think this is fair, you just get berated and shut down and you go, whoa.
Yeah, it would be a very difficult thing to overcome. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be with the East versus West setups, the WAL setups, that they allow that style of match to come together. I know they're very, very strict with, say, the WAF and stuff like that. It's very much like the referee is telling you how it goes, and if you don't listen, then it's a foul instantly. But the matches tend to be a lot more boring.
Yeah, it's such a tricky line to cross, right? Because like there's such a difference between what's good for the athletes versus what's good for the spectators. And unfortunately, like what's good for the spectators is kind of letting everything go as crazy as you can, right? Obviously keep the matches short, but you want that argument, you want, everybody complaining, you want all those like crazy things to happen because that is entertaining. On the other side of the thing, if you're just like an athlete that just wants to arm wrestle, you kind of want the refs to be very strict, at least from where I'm sitting. I mean, I know other people, they like to do everything they possibly can to take that win. But if you're just there going, I'm the stronger dude, you want that match to be as fair as possible. So it's kind of hard to gauge like what we should let people get away with, what we shouldn't.
Yeah, it's that fine line, as you said, and this is one of the things as a promoter to set up a rules that is, I mean, so it's arm wrestling entertainment is what we've called our company for a reason. Yep. And we want people to be entertained when they watch our matches. And yeah, if we've got those really, really rigid, strict rules, it's not going to be entertainment, that's for sure. It's very long, drawn out. Yep. You get a lot of fouls in the setup, and matches can end before anyone's done anything. And it's like, where was the arm wrestling? There was no arm wrestling. They didn't even get to that bit. So that side of it can be very difficult to figure out what do we need, what's the balance of how do we allow competitors to get a fair grip, but it doesn't take 10 minutes to get them started.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Olympics handle it, right? Like we get those like last couple of signatures or whatever for arm wrestling to be in the Olympics. It'll be very interesting to see because they're very strict on their rules and regulations, right? So we might end up seeing like the most boring arm wrestling you could ever see, which would suck because the Olympics is something that would hopefully get more people entertained in arm wrestling. If they go balls to the rules, this is strict rule set, you're probably not even going to see matches. Like you might just see every single match end in fouls, the winner's claimed, and you just lose a bunch of audience that actually, may have wanted to look at arm wrestling. So,
yeah, I don't think the Olympics is the right path to be moving the sport forwards. And I don't think that if they did get it in there, that you would see any of the top guys competing. I mean, we know that you've got the performance enhancing pancakes side of things, which is going to prevent these people from competing. And you'd say the vast majority of the top guys are using those substances. So they're not going to be competing in the Olympics knowing that they're going to get caught. So, you're going to have the sport which you love, which is the arm wrestling. Oh, it's in the Olympics. It's going to be amazing. And then it's like, who's there? It's like, I've never heard of any of these people.
Yeah. And that's exactly right as well. Don't get me wrong. I do kind of like the idea of us having a league that is completely like natural and tested. The problem is we're just not there yet, right? Like if arm wrestling gets to that point of popularity where testing and stuff, there's enough money in it. It's nice. It's nice to have the idea that there's an avenue for people that are against pancakes that want to compete, and they probably couldn't compete against the people who, are in the same boat as them. It'd be nice, but right now I think we're just way too far away from it. I guess the Olympics would give that avenue, but I feel like it'd just be way too strict, that it'd just be boring. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I was talking about this on the Arm Wrestling Buzz podcast last week about the difference in the UFC when they brought in very, very strict drug testing, and the product was damaged by that. The athletes weren't as fast, they weren't as powerful, they weren't as explosive. They were getting injured for longer periods of time. The fights were not as interesting. And it was. I know why they did it. They brought it in to be able to put the company up for sale, which they did a year later. They sold it for $400 million. Was it $4 billion? I don't know, $4 billion or something. But that was one of their selling points was, we have this really, strict drug testing program. But overall, and from the viewer's point of view, it did suffer. And the fights were just like, as I said, there weren't as many fights that I wanted to see anymore. Or if you did see your favorite fighter, suddenly they're a quarter of the size they used to be, or it was like, or they're just not, or they just keep getting injured over and over. And, they're coming into a fight injured, they're hurt. So yeah, it is difficult to, if you're going to implement drug testing, that is a consequence of that, unfortunately, that, you aren't going to have those freaky, strong, crazy people that are enhanced to a point where, you're going to, but when you get two people like that against each other, it's sort of like, okay, well, it's fair game, as in you do whatever you want to do for your body. I'm going to do whatever I want to do for my body. We both know we're using stuff and getting on the table and going against each other. And I guess the moral question is, if somebody is not using anything and they say, well, I can't compete with these guys, they're using stuff, they're enhanced. But the consequence of that is to say, well, if you're choosing to get into a sport or any sport, you have to realize the elite guys in any sport are more than likely using stuff. It's a sort of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's a sad reality, but I mean, I think one of the most ridiculous thing is where we have like a sport like ours, and I mean, like a league recently randomly deciding to do drug testing. It's such a dumb move. Like, you look at it at a global scale, like all the dudes at the top level, they're on stuff. If you have a league that you randomly decide, like, I'm going to start testing, you're basically saying anyone who arm wrestles under us are now never going to be able to compete at a top level. You're strictly saying we're not allowing you to do the stuff that literally every single other like division on the planet's doing. So you get to stay with us, and there's nothing going to come from it. So I think until there's some big leagues in the world that are doing drug testing, which honestly, who knows if that ever happens. But if it does, that's where you can start bringing in all that stuff. But I think for now, it's just it's better just to kind of keep it how it is.
Yeah, and I think probably bodybuilding is the best example of this, where you've got your open bodybuilding class, which is your biggest, freakiest, mass monster guys, but they were able to build that natural industry up to a level where, the guys aren't as big, they aren't as aesthetic or lean or, throughout the year or anything like that, but they added in other elements into their organization that got people interested in it overall. So, say it wasn't just the biggest, strongest looking bodybuilders. They went, okay, we're going to do a natural league, but we'll add in the bikini classes. We'll add in the wellness class. We'll add in the mums class. We'll add in the classic physique class. They'll add in, so they had to change their product to improve it and get interest in it, because they knew that they couldn't compete with the guys that were the freakiest mass monsters that were taking a lot of gear. So, okay, we can't do that. And our best guys would not even be in the top 100 in the world.
Well, exactly right.
So what can we do? And I sort of respect the fact that there's organizations out there that made the adjustment and the shift to say, okay, well, rather than trying to compete with that, let's put in things where, what is the board short class or whatever, and they want more of a realistic physique. Like if you're the
men's physique.
Yeah, men's physique. Yeah. So if you're going into the gym and you're training really hard and it's like, well, that's a goal that you could have. You realistically, if you trained hard with a lot of discipline for many years, you could be competitive in that class, like legitimately. Whereas, if you look at the guys who are in Mr. Olympia stage, it's like, not only do you have to have the right genetics for it, but you've got to have the right supplements for it. And it's more than likely that it's never going to happen no matter how hard you train. So it's beyond your reach. So they sort of have set a bar where it's like, this is the unattainable. And you could almost see that happening in arm wrestling, where it's like, if you want to be at that absolute elite level, unless you're using stuff, it's probably not going to happen. But if there's other elements or other classes or other tournaments or more things that we can add in that gets the general people that love getting on the table, and they love the sport, and they get strong at it, they get really good at it, and they're competitive, and that's their goal, is to go into that and win that, and rather than looking at the absolute elite level that requires the supplement side of it.
Yeah, I think the exception with arm wrestling, and this may just be being hopeful, but I believe weight classes, like if you're within a weight class, not in supers, I think there may actually be potential of you making it very far without supplementation, assuming you do everything else perfectly, right? Because, I mean, you think about it, if you're, let's say, like in the 75 to 85 kilo class, if you're sitting at 85 kilos, you're natural, you're somehow got your body fat down to, let's say, like 10%, you can compete against someone who's on gear probably around the same body fat percentage than you. So by that logic, you probably got similar like muscle mass. You could probably still compete in some sensible word. Like once you're in the super heavyweights, you're not competing at a top level without gear. Like it's just not possible. But when you're sitting in that weight class, I believe there is the potential that you could probably still get to at least the semi-high level without the needs of any sort of help. So.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, we might start wrapping things up. If anyone has any questions at all they want to throw in to Steve, please let us know in the chat. But we'll probably go for another 5 minutes, I reckon. And
yeah, sounds good.
So tell us some more about this match again, just one more time before we finish up.
Yeah, so match against Bobby over in Indonesia. He is their current number one. I'll be versing him right arm. Looking forward to a lot. That should be on the 14th. We haven't set a time yet, but I'm hoping to get that like live streamed, or it will be recorded nonetheless. Yeah, really, really looking forward to it. I still haven't been able to figure out kind of what style he pulls, because a lot of the matches I've seen, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what lane he's going in. So I'm very looking forward to it. I'm very confident, but I'm definitely not underestimating. A few people have kind of brought up the point that he's 95 kilos and I'm 120. But I kind of believe, like, you know, you've got our number one in our state. He's, I think at 85 kilos right now. You definitely don't underestimate someone just because they're lighter than you, because he may be an absolute monster. So I'm training very hard for that. And I'm definitely I'm probably at my peak strength that I've ever been at right now. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, weight is a factor, but it is not the only factor.
Exactly.
And if he's the number one in the country, well, who else are you supposed to go against?
Well, exactly right, you know.
So this is our best guy. It's like, oh, but he weighs less. Oh, forget it. Give me somebody who weighs the same, who's not as good.
Well, this is what I mean. I'm walking in, I'm extremely confident that I'm going to take the win, but I'm definitely not hitting that mindset thinking that I'm just getting it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And you are having a left-hand match, which even though the opponent is 60, he's the only guy that's sort of stepped forwards at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, as I said, they're apparently not huge on their left arm competitions over there. So I at least had someone step up, so that's going to be a good match. And then hopefully I'll just get the opportunity to maybe do like a king of the table or something else there on left. Not to say I'm just going to like easily win this match. Who knows? As I said, this guy could be an absolute like ridiculous left-hand puller. But I'm definitely looking forward to, I guess, trying to show that left hand is important, just like right is.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, we'll figure out where it's going to be played. We might even get it streamed or something on here, but on the Hollywood Matt Connelly channel. But we'll definitely have it up so that people can enjoy it. And the 14th of September is when that will take place. And yeah, it was great to have you on the show. Is any final comments? You have an Instagram or anything for people to follow?
Yes, I've just started making an Instagram. I'm going to be uploading more and more content, just kind of the training and stuff leading around to it. That's Stephen the Squid Carroll. Yeah, we didn't get a chance to go into my nickname, but
No, that's all right.
Yeah,
well,
but
you can tell us now. I'm sure people are like, hang on, I want to know about that.
All right, so the squid came about a lot of I guess debate about what my nickname was. I'd never had a nickname for a long time. We went back and forth, me and Matt, kind of deciding on what that should be. We kind of thought that it should have something to do with the fact that I slip every single match. Like, I like the straps, I'm going to sit in the straps. And through back and forth, the squid was kind of just the one that felt fun. And I also think it's kind of funny, right? Like, having a nickname that just sounds goofy and then actually being strong, I think is kind of cool. So yeah.
It is a funny one. Yeah, it's memorable absolutely. It's great. I mean, it's like Chance with the tugboat. It's
exactly.
Leaning into the comedy side of it. And so keep an eye out for Stephen Carroll. Thank you once again for jumping on the stream, and thanks to everyone who has made a comment and watched in the chat. And Kyle's jumped in with a last little comment there. You slippery little squid. Almost a tongue twister of itself. But yes, thank you to everybody, and we'll end this stream